Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream on the HVI podcast. And tonight I'm joined by my co-host, DJ Chonsky, and also James Valliant. It's been about a year since I had Jim on the show. So welcome back, James. Thank you for joining me.
Well, great to be here again. Well, it's been too long.
Indeed.
And great to you, too. So thank you.
Now, I know some of you are curious. There was obviously a reconciliation that has taken place here between myself and James. So last year, James and I had a misunderstanding, which I'm not going to get into, but not long after that had taken place, I was informed of an allegation which alleges that James Valliant and his co-author Warren Fahey in their book Creating Christ used an artistic representation of what was thought to be technically a fake coin, but in reality it was not a fake coin, and it was based on a coin that actually exists. So Jim, did you want to speak on that real quick?
Yeah, the idea that the dolphin and anchor wasn't a common symbol is, I think, absurd to claim. The Romans had it on their coins. Titus and Hadrian certainly did, and it certainly was part of Christian iconography. And we never claimed it was a coin. We were using an image as an illustrative point that Christians, they put the Christian symbols on it in the 20th century. But the point is that it was just an illustration to show that the dolphin and anchor symbol was been used by Christians. It was in a batch of images we use, including the pendant still sold by the Catholic Church that has an anchor and Jesus on it where the dolphin should be. So we're just showing that it's a Christian symbol all the way up to today. And we had several other, it was contained at the end of chapter 1 in a batch of other symbols. Now, when we claim it to be ancient, the image, always the image we have, we tell you its provenance, where it is and what its date is. And we made no such claim about this image. It does, however, show that Christians 100 years ago, at least, were still using it, and still to this day, still use the very Titus symbol as a Christian symbol. There can be no doubt of that.
So we'll save the rest for a later video because that's not what today's video is about. But yeah, Douglas Del Tondo, who has also been on the channel, who operated as my lawyer and Valliant's lawyer in the past, he's looked into this coin thing further and realized that that the allegation is false. But anyway, there's going to be a future video on that. But tonight, we're going to be reviewing a debate between Ammon Hillman and the exorcist Bob Larson. This was done on the Danny Jones podcast. Danny Jones moderated the debate. It happened in person. They were all there, and we're going to watch it together. So let's get going.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it at all.
All right, let's get going.
Yeah.
So are they rolling right now?
I don't know. Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we are rolling. So where were we? You were explaining to me how I could give myself to Jesus.
Yes.
Is this okay? Okay.
And the answer to that, and Ammon knows what I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm. Steve, you got me a
It's
white
simple
rabbit, please.
faith in trust in Christ. Jesus said, if you're going to follow me, you'll have to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. Now, picking up the cross is an allusion to all sorts of ways of self-negation. But you have to make God's will your will. You have to want his thoughts to be your thoughts and to live a life pleasing to him. That's not a perfectionist journey. It's a journey of faith. The Bible talks about gradually being transformed into the image of Christ. That can take a lifetime. It certainly can take a lot of years or months. But it means just stepping off one path to the other path by saying what Romans 10:9 and 10 in the Bible tells us to say. It says, if you believe in your heart that God has raised Christ from the dead, and you confess it with your mouth, you will be saved. For with the heart man believes the righteousness of God. With the mouth he makes confession to that truth. Now, I've added a few colloquialisms there in it, but just to make it understandable to you in basic language.
Do I have to go to confession? Do I have to confess my sins to anybody?
To God,
Just to God.
here and now. You know what they are.
I confess my sins on every podcast. I don't hide anything.
Of course you have sins. Your
Like what?
first sin is rejecting Christ.
I don't necessarily reject Christ.
Yes, you do.
I don't think I reject him.
It's not a...
I believe Christ was a real person.
Wait a minute. You're rejecting who he said he was. All right.
So that's where
We're not talking about a malicious, malignant, evil, deliberate defiance of God.
right.
We're talking about...
I'm skeptical.
That's
I'm
fine.
skeptical.
That's fine.
That's my
Then-
job to be
then-
skeptical. I'm a
then-
journalist.
Then maybe this is your first step on the path to God. For some people, it doesn't happen necessarily in an instant. It's progressive. But they have to at least say a prayer that quantifies the possibility of who Christ is and what he claimed. So if you say, and I've had many people who on their own have just gotten on their knees and said, Christ, if you are who Christianity says you are, if you are truly God, I need you to show that to me. I need you to prove that to me in some way. God's willing to do that. It may not happen today or tomorrow. Could happen now, but it might be a process where any number of things happen that are just God coincidences. And you,
My skepticism comes in where people like you and you and people like you say these things that sound good, right? But all this stuff is coming from texts, and I don't know how to read the texts. And everybody says the texts say something different.
not everybody says that. Certain individuals may say that.
People in Christianity, in theology that subscribe or ascribe to that religion, they all say the same thing.
What?
People that are outside that religion say different things. People like Dr. Hillman say different things. Everyone has their own interpretation of these texts,
Okay.
and I don't know what's
Okay.
real.
You simply say, Jesus Christ, if you are the Son of God, if you are the creator of all that exists, if you gave me the breath of life, I need you in some way to show that to me. Because I'm not ready to make what Kierkegaard called the leap of faith.
Right.
Okay?
So I need to ask that
You need to ask God.
and see what happens.
Just repeat after me.
Okay.
And don't say anything you don't want to say.
Okay.
Say, Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
if you are God's Son,
if you are God's son,
if you always existed in eternity past,
if you always existed in eternity past,
if it is true,
if it is true,
the only forgiveness of sins
the only forgiveness of sins
is your death upon the cross,
is your death upon the cross.
I need to know that.
I need to know that.
Show that to me, Lord.
Show that to me, Lord.
And
And
I will hand you all of my sins
I will hand you all of my sins
to be forgiven
to be forgiven
and walk in newness of life.
and walk the newness of life.
Now, if you really meant that and you embraced Christ now, I'd love to get some water and baptize you, but I won't do that. You're not ready for that yet. But what?
Should I let him baptize me?
What?
That's your decision, bro.
What kind of?
What's in that water?
Nothing.
How do you make it?
By prayer.
Yeah, you can already see now it's starting to get into the debate area. So right now we got largely past the preaching intro, if you want to refer to it that way.
It was.
Well, it's kind of curious that you're talking to someone you don't know exists. And, I don't normally address people I don't know actually exist, or things I don't know actually exist. But it seems that it's like Augustine of Hippo. You have to believe first, and then all the logic will make sense to you. But you have to believe first. And I'd contrast that with other, Christian theologians through the ages, like Thomas Aquinas, who said you have to prove it with observation and Aristotelian logic before you can even get theology off the ground. But this is standard Christian apologia, where I also don't buy into thought crimes. In other words, if my rational judgment doesn't have me believing in Jesus, I'm not a sinner. If I'm going by my best judgment, how can that be a sin? I do not believe in sins that aren't volitional, that is to say, my fault. If I honestly, with my sincere belief, don't see evidence now, I'm not going to pretend that there's, someone there listening even. But this does sound like the radical faith position, the radical irrationalist position. Believe first, the proof will come later at some point. Okay. I don't work that way. Aquinas believed in God. I don't believe in God, but Aquinas believed in God, and he had it just the other way about. He said, first, you've got to prove it with observation and logic. And I'm with Aquinas, even though I come to a different conclusion than St. Thomas Aquinas.
And I feel like I paused it at like the perfect frame. Ammon looks so weird right there, the way his eyes and his facial expression. But anyway, let's resume.
There's no chemicals in there?
No. Baptismal water is simply a symbolic representation of dying to self and living to Christ. Because the scripture says in Romans chapter 6 that we are buried with Christ in baptism in death, that as he was raised from the dead to the glory of God his Father, we will be raised again to a new life in Christ. So it's just one of what's called the ordinances or the sacraments, depending on your theological position of the church. And through that, you express faith. So now you've put God on the spot, so to speak. If you meant what you said, and now you have to be open to God working in your life, and you don't know how that's going to happen. It could be one of a million ways that God now will step in and show you what you were made for and created for. You have a brilliant mind. You have a quick mind. You have the ability to do incredibly great things. I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm saying that in all honesty, you are, and you're essentially a good person.
I try to be.
Yeah, with what tools you have. But you have to understand that the Christian life, Paul said, this life that I live in my body, I live by the faith of the Son of God. For it is not me, but it is Christ within me. If Christ was not in me, I would have been dead a long time ago, because the demons would have killed me. But they can't, because I belong to Christ. And so what you basically do is you build these walls of protection around you and your family by faith in God. Now, that's not to say nothing bad will ever happen. Sometimes bad things do happen.
Now, let me ask you this. By repeating all those things you just told me, am I opening myself up to any vulnerability with demons?
No, absolutely.
No.
In fact,
I'm protecting myself against the demons.
In fact, quite the contrary. You have just served notice on the devil that you've taken a first step toward God. Now, they have to start backing away. Not a long ways away, but they start back, oh no. What are we going to do now? They're scrambling. They're thinking, all right, we got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this.
Right.
Don't worry about them. Keep your eyes on God. Just that simple.
So now I can watch out for any sort of signs that I get from God.
But you
in
got to
my
be
life.
you got to be looking for them.
Okay.
You got to be saying every day, God, I'm looking for that truth that you're real. Now, I don't want to wax poetic here, but it might be a sunset. Might just be a beautiful day, and you just say, "Wow, I'm grateful for this day, God." Whoops, when did I say that?
I see.
Oh,
I understand.
I'm thanking God for life.
Right.
There it is.
Okay.
And then
I understand.
see what happens next, and you got my phone number.
Okay. I want to ask you if you think, based on everything you've learned about Ammon and listening to the podcast, do you
Here we
think
go.
that he is truly possessed by a demon?
Unquestionably. Unquestionably. I can't see his face. That's the only problem because of these lights
of
here.
the
But
lights.
that's
Can
okay.
you put some light on my face?
I can't. I
Am I
can't.
gonna look like trash in this?
No,
or
you
what?
look great. Can you show a picture of Ammon on the camera?
I can't.
Steve?
I can't see past his shirt.
There we go. Go to the solo. Go to the solo on.
Look, I have a glow.
Look at he looks gorgeous.
Oh my God! If
Okay.
you can't get in with that,
He's got a
something's
sheen.
wrong with you, baby.
He wore that shirt for me today, and he knows it.
I did. Do you know who this is?
Now you tell me.
That shirt?
No, that's okay. I'm
Okay.
not your. I'm
I
not
mean
your
the
tour
shirt
guide.
on the outside.
I'm not your tour guide.
He's talking
I have
about
a
this one.
question. I have a question from the devil. The devil keeps telling me, Bob, he keeps telling me, yeah, but the problem is Bob has never read the Bible. I tell all my seminarian students when I was teaching at a seminary.
And by the way, in case I didn't make it clear earlier, tell me when to stop when either of you want to say something.
Well,
I told all of them the first day of class. I said,
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Put that right there.
"Oh, is this a hearing device?
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
he has
Bob.
trouble. No.
Sorry." I tell my seminary students the first day of class, "You've never read the Bible," and they all give me a dirty look, Bob.
Well, I know where you're going.
They all
with this.
give me a dirty look. Well, let me go there.
Well,
I'm
why-
a classical
why
philologist.
go there? I know
Bob,
where you're
this
going.
is why the Harvard people won't come. I am a classical philologist.
I know what you are. Watch.
I think they won't come down there because they find you a creep. You know? you know, buddy?
And you don't have to be from Harvard to be a little suspicious of Ammon Hillman, who's bringing a message from Satan. You see, it sounds like one guy is, look, believe first, you got to really mean what you say. And that sort of presupposes that you believe. And if a sunset will do it, I'm sorry, it's going to take more than a sunset to do it. But Ammon, you'll notice, immediately begins, well, I'm bringing a message from Satan. So, well, they're squared off, in their corners. Two fictitious beings, as far as I'm concerned, are squaring off here. They're advocates of two fictitious beings. They're squaring off here.
You notice that Ammon's strategy is to get Bob to demonstrate he can exercise him of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he brings that in right away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, Sean, did you want to say something or
No, I'm enjoying the video.
Okay. All right, let's keep
the
going.
videos.
And you have never read the Bible. Tell me what a Christ
Okay.
is.
Okay.
What is a Christ?
I'm not going to tell you that.
Because you don't know,
No,
Bob.
no. Wait a minute.
What is a Christ?
Wait a minute. I did not agree.
How is he supposed to believe? If you don't know what a
did
Christ
not
is or what a
agree to
gospel
this.
is, that's why the people at Harvard
And
wouldn't
I
come.
will either get up and walk out of here.
Okay, why? Because cowardice? If I am possessed,
Let's be
you
respectful.
should
Let's
not.
let's be respectful.
No,
and
he
debate
just-
the text.
No,
Okay,
no, he's
okay,
not.
we gotta
He's-
be nice to each
Okay,
other.
I'm
We gotta be
sorry.
nice. That's the
I'm
only
sorry.
that's the only way this is
We
gonna
do
this is
have
gonna
to-
happen.
Understood.
Okay.
Now,
So let's just discuss the
Yes.
facts, the text, and everything we're here to
Okay,
discuss.
fine.
And let's not call each other names or be rude.
Thank you, Danny. I
Okay, is
told
that
you.
okay, Bob?
I was thinking as I stepped out of the room a moment ago that it would be a good idea. Where are you in New Mexico?
I'm in Taos, New Mexico.
Taos.
Right.
Of course, why
right-
not? The New
right
Age
off
capital of New Mexico.
Right off of no. I'm not into any hippie stuff. I can't stand hippies.
Okay. All right.
I've been
So I would
studying
suggest-
Greek and the Bible for the last 35 years. That's what I want
I
to
know
talk
what
about.
you've done.
I
I
want
know.
to talk about the Bible.
I
Bob
just would like to suggest
Yes.
that to really have a candid conversation, no cameras, you get in your car and drive down to Phoenix,
Yeah, but that makes you look like a coward.
and I will be happy to spend time with you. Normally, we ask for a donation to help cover my staff and facilities,
Bob, it's flim flam.
but
You got to be nice. Listen,
I will
God.
be
You
happy.
nice.
Oh God!
I will be
Put
happy.
the devil back.
I will be happy to provide you with a complimentary exorcism session.
No, thank you. I don't.
But
I don't have a
but-
demon,
but
Bob.
wait a minute.
I wanted to talk about the Bible. I don't have a demon. I'm
Which
not
would
here
be-
First of all,
to
wait,
talk
wait,
about
wait.
a
We
demon.
have to appreciate the fact that Bob is the only one who has the balls to come in here and talk to you.
Oh, that's kudos. Big balls.
No one else will do
Kudos.
it.
Nobody, Bob. And this was Harvard
Okay,
people.
okay,
This
so-
was Harvard.
Hang on, let him go, let him
Who
go.
else?
But you're not letting me talk.
Let him talk.
Please,
You're not
go
letting
ahead,
me.
go ahead, go ahead.
You're trying to control the agenda. So
No, that's
just
why I'm here.
Let me finish speaking. Where it's just you and me, and maybe a ministry associate there with me, and that we have a candid conversation about you and your life and your beliefs, and I'm very happy to do that. But that would have to be in a setting where there's transparency and honesty, and we can have an exchange without playing to the galleries.
Yes, definitely. That's a great, wonderful
let's-
idea. If I were demon possessed, Bob, but I'm not demon
Well,
possessed, and I
wait a
don't
minute.
need your spiritual help. I was coming to you as one former man of God to another person who appreciates the Bible, Bob. And I just
You're
want to
trying-
know, please tell me, why was Jesus
This
arrested
is the
in a
reason
public
I
park
didn't
with a
want you
naked
around
kid?
in this room when I talked with him, is because you're a control freak trying to get the upper hand on everything. So just be a
One
human.
answer. That's the
Just-
only question.
just-
Oh, what I want to say real quick is that Bob. It's funny that Bob says that because Bob won't shut up either.
Right.
He just keeps going and going and going, never ends. And
Like
he's
a-
also cutting Ammon off. It's just getting crazy over here.
Yeah, he complains about Ammon being a control freak, but he sounds like a control freak, and he's dominating the conversation. It's got to be
Right.
And it's as if you can't have two people having an honest conversation in public because they must play to the gallery. He's good. He's claiming that Ammon is already dishonest. Now that I don't know what's to come, and maybe he'll give him some basis for it. But why can't they have an honest conversation right here? Because there's a neutral, moderator. I don't get it.
Right. And the fact that Bob is suggesting to Ammon to have a more cordial conversation in private is already suggesting he's being dishonest right there.
Yeah.
Himself.
Say that too, yeah.
Because although I see that Ammon is ridiculous and his theories are nonsense, Bob isn't doing himself any favors in this conversation either.
Right. He would do much to
now-
talk the Bible with him. Right.
Now, Ammon claims that he's not demon possessed, but he's also proving Bob's point in his belief system because he keeps saying he's communicating with the devil, making it seem like to Bob it actually is true.
Why can't they just get on to their disagreements about the biblical text? Now, I don't think that the biblical text won't prove much to me about the existence of God, but or demons, or that Ammon is possessed by a demon or not, which is what they seem to be mired in. But if they want to have a textual discussion of what's in the Bible, why don't they get on with it? Gosh.
I'll ask
Talk
you.
to me.
That's it.
Talk to me as a human being.
Just
Okay.
ask him
Do you
kindly
think
what
it's
your question
possible?
is.
Do you think
As
it's
a human
possible?
being.
When
Okay.
when Jesus was arrested in Gethsemane with a naked kid screaming, "I'm not a child."
We know what you think about. Okay.
Could it
Okay,
be
okay,
that he was
listen, we
actually?
both have
I'm
turns.
about 30 seconds from walking out of
We
here.
have to take
Okay.
turns. I'm gonna ask the question, and then we have to stop, and we have to let Bob give his response.
That's reasonable.
Okay,
when
go ahead.
Jesus Christ was arrested in Gethsemane at 4 a.m. with a naked boy screaming, "I am not a child," or lestes in Greek, could it actually be, Bob, that he was doing creepy things?
Bob, the stage is yours.
Are you suggesting that Christ was a pedophile?
No, I'm saying.
Are you saying that he was a pedophile?
No,
Are you
I'm
saying
the
that?
text says that Jesus
Are
Christ.
you saying that Christ was a pedophile based upon what you think the text said?
I think what he's saying is no. He doesn't believe that he's not stating his own beliefs.
No, I
what
have
he's
no
saying
arguments.
is he's
Yeah.
repeating.
I'm not interested in arguments. I'm saying the text. I want the real Jesus.
That
when Jesus
is
was arrested,
intellectual dishonesty, and you know it, and you're not going to overpower me the way you normally do people. It's no wonder nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you are suggesting in any way, shape, or form on any evidentiary basis that you have in your mind
yeah,
that Christ did that, there's no dialogue that we can have.
Well, so
I'm still willing to meet with you in private, where there's no need for you to have to play to an audience, and no need for me to prove anything to anybody.
Have you read this, Bob? Have you actually read the Bible?
Okay, you're just a broken record.
No. I want to talk about the text.
You do not possess the. You honestly don't possess the intellectual latitude to move outside of a predetermined frame of reference where you can beat your drum, and I'm not going to buy into that. Okay, you're not.
Is that me or the demon?
Why are you questioning? Yeah. Why are you questioning whether or not Bob has read the Bible?
Because
what do you think?
Because
if there's something, if there's possible that he missed something, what do you think that is?
You know, because Bob does what Bible scholars always do, and New Testament theologians, divinity degrees. They don't have access to that ground-based material.
And you're referring to the original sources.
To the philology. They don't have access to the text,
well,
right?
What we have here...
Okay, hold on.
What we have here is you against the world, you against 2,000 years of church history, you against the most esteemed scholars in the world, and quite frankly, I don't think you match up, and I'm not willing to have that debate because it's a dishonest debate.
What's a Christ?
In my
opinion.
opinion.
Tell me that?
Okay. No, I know where you're going with that, and there's no point.
Why,
of
Bob? You
translation.
tell everybody what a Christ is. You just converted this man.
Just tell me.
What is a Christ?
No, we didn't convert him. What we did was to nudge him along the pathway.
I just gave up. I just gave myself to Christ.
Yeah.
I opened my heart to Christ.
Give a measure of your life to Christ, and that is a great step to take.
So Ammon told me, and 2 million people on my podcast, most of which believe what he is saying, because we have no way of discerning whether he's telling the lying or not. We have no way of finding out reading these texts. But the way Ammon described it to us, and there's millions of views on this stuff, that the word Christ in ancient Greek, the first time the word Christ was ever used in the history of humanity was for somebody that was using drugs.
Okay, well, that's the gospel according to Ammon.
No, not the gospel. He's talking about text earlier.
That's the gospel according to him. Okay. That's what I'm saying. All right.
No, that was Diodorus of Sicily.
So we're going to discard the canonization of Scripture, all the councils of the church that have been held throughout the ages, at great time, effort, and intellectual energy to go through all of these issues over and over again. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to, because of this guy, throw them out the window and say they don't matter anymore because I am the Greek scholar who knows the truth.
I don't think we need to throw anything out the window. All I'm looking for...
Yes, we are.
I'm not, personally. And I know you're not.
But he is.
I don't think... I think it's okay that he is. I think it's okay that he is. But I don't think...
He's entitled to have his position.
Of course. As so are you, and so am I. But my goal here is to just have a dialogue. No one's willing to have this dialogue, and I think it's freaking incredible that we're able to have this dialogue.
We're not having a dialogue. We're attempting
to have a dialogue here.
Because he is stuck like a politician on talking points, and he is going to stay there and not move off of that to deal with the larger realm.
All right, so I'll stop it there. James?
Yeah,
I
do not have a particularly, I've listened to many of Ammon's podcasts, and I don't have a particularly good opinion of Ammon as a scholar or, frankly, as a human being. But in so far, it's, the Christian apologist who is attacking, engaged in personal attack, who's not letting him discuss the text. It was presumably meant to be a discussion of their different views of the text. And it's our Christian apologist who's refusing to even discuss the text, and that maybe the ecumenical councils through the last 2,000 years have maybe got something wrong. Here, I have to say, Ammon is at the most reasonable I've ever seen him. So far, I think I have to give this one, at this point, to Ammon, because they won't even let Ammon state his position. I think if Ammon was to fill out his position, then we might have something to criticize. And everyone might have something to criticize, but they won't let him get it out of his mouth. He refuses to let Ammon state his position. We know where he's coming from, and he's wrong. I know that before even hearing it. Frankly, the apologist is making Ammon look very sympathetic, in my view, so far.
We'll keep playing. I think I might pull up some stuff from my previous Ammon Hillman rebuttal show that I did on my channel. But for now, we'll just let it keep playing.
Okay.
Of church history, the Hebrew scriptures, as well as the Septuagint.
Did you read the Septuagint, Bob?
And so, as a result of that, he's got a couple of basic talking points, and he's just going to keep throwing those out there over and over and over.
Do you actually read the Septuagint,
which is
Bob?
intellectually dishonest.
Do you read the Bible?
What I would
or the
like,
Septuagint?
What I would like.
I know you're going to get up and leave because you're a coward. But the devil asked me to ask you,
okay,
have you actually read the Septuagint?
Okay. If I hear one more ad hominem argument, this is over.
Who do you think you are?
Okay.
You want to walk out? Take the money and walk. Take it and walk. You're a coward. You don't read these texts, and people just like you are afraid. The head of Dallas Theological Seminary's Greek program wouldn't come here, Bob, and sit where you are.
May I ask a question?
Because none of you actually reads ancient Greek.
May I ask a question?
Yes, it's your turn. It's your turn.
You are a self-confessed former Christian.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
yes,
you were born again.
Definitely.
Huh?
Definitely.
Okay. And then at some point, you walked away from that.
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
You're
okay.
right.
Now, without trying to make it sound like Greek and Hebrew had you walk away from it, can you tell me what that negative epiphany was?
Yes, it was Aristotle's pure muse. It was that genius. It was that genius in the Greek, which is far harder. If you studied any, you know that Greek is capacity that English will never achieve.
We've all heard this before from you. I want to know from a personal standpoint.
That's what turned me. The beauty in that.
That's
Bob.
it. That's what you claim as an intellectual vortex. But I want to know what the practical decision was based on to walk away from your faith and to deny Christ to the extent to which you have. So, to call it a file, how did you get from here to here? I just want to know.
Wait, what's the file doing?
How did you get from your original view of Christ to the about Christ?
Oh, that took years of study. I wrote in a book, Bob, The Chemical Muse that I published, I wrote in that book that Hebrew was the original language of the Greek. Of the Old Testament, just like everybody else says, right? Just like any panel scholars would tell you. I wrote that in a book. Why? Because it was not until I actually read and reread and worked with those sources until I realized, oh my God, this thing is not a translation. This is gorgeous, perfect Greek.
Okay.
And it's precise,
okay,
right?
We've heard all this before on his show.
Yeah.
So who published that book?
The Septuagint?
No, the book that you just referred to that you wrote.
Oh, no. He's talking about The Chemical Muse? You're talking about The Chemical Muse, the book that he published?
Yeah. Who published that book?
Who published Chemical Muse? Was it Macmillan?
It's Macmillan now, but originally it's St. James. No, what's his name? It's a saint.
What was the name of the publisher?
Yeah, I'll think of it. Oh,
Steve, Google it.
Thomas Dunn Books and St. Martin's Press.
St. Martin's Press.
Yes.
Okay. Just curious. No.
Why is that relevant, though?
Well, it's very relevant.
I'm curious.
Because that's not a respected Christian publisher. It's a publisher that puts out a lot of crazy stuff out there.
I wasn't trying to target
I'm
a
just
Christian
saying
audience, so
that-
it was just
and
general.
there was no, and was there a theological overview board that passed off on what you wrote in the book? No.
Bob,
It wasn't a theological book.
No, it was
It was
no.
It was a
Oh, is that what
history
you're
on. It was
getting
a,
at? Is a history
Okay.
book, Bob.
it was a history
Well,
book on Roman pharmacy.
I stand by the offer that I made,
Yeah.
and I think it's a good offer. I'm getting a little tired of the devil staring me in the face on your shirt.
Why would you? Okay.
Look,
Anyway,
yeah,
go ahead.
we're just here to let the audience learn from you guys and listen to these ideas
Well,
clash.
But
And I think this is fascinating.
But we have a clash, as I've already stated to you, of apostasy and a departure from the faith, virulent apostasy that is demonically based, in my opinion, and it's very difficult to have dialogue.
How do you think that it's demonically
Well, I
based?
think you're being aggressive and a little bit nasty, and that's not really lending itself well to
calmed
us.
it
Is there
down.
nastiness?
We calmed it down. You called him a coward.
so-
That wasn't nice.
I just asked
No,
a
he's
He's
practical.
calmed down.
Yeah.
He's calmed
I
down.
asked-
We're
yeah. No, the
I
devil
asked a
called him
practical
coward.
question and really didn't get an answer as to
Yeah. Okay. What was your question? I'm sorry. I'll answer
how
it again.
and when,
Yeah.
leaving the Greek and the Hebrew out of it and all of
Yes.
that intellectual posturing, just how and when, what age did you walk away
I
from the
was
faith?
21,
Okay.
and I was sitting in the room that I was renting with Jose, who's a veterinary student. It was a brilliant time, and I was sitting there reading Aristotle, and I realized, oh my God, the gorgeousness of this universe and the reason. It's so beautiful. It must be the foundation of everything. And it clicked in my head. Something classical clicked in my head. And I said, oh, I get it. I understand the burden of sin, right? Because I was a Bible scholar. I was a student.
Okay,
of the
so
what do
Bible.
you mean by that? I have a question.
So
You understand the burden of sin. What did you mean by that?
The beauty of the universe is in the design that it is perfect, right? And the classical world understood this, and they worshipped, as Bob will tell you, they worshipped as a result nature and the organization and music. Remember, a third of education is music.
A third of
right?
education was music?
Yeah, harmony, baby. If you don't understand what harmony is, it's because you don't worship nature. So that's what I was thinking about when I was reading Aristotle.
That was an abrupt U-turn from where you were at theologically and personally. And so,
Definitely.
okay. And so you chose Socrates, you chose Greek philosophy.
Socrates, no, I didn't. Socrates, I got to think about Plato.
Greek
I can't stand
philosophy and all the gods and goddesses that come along with it, and that understanding of a worldview that became.
No, I had a demon help me there. I think I'm going to pre-identify what you're going to identify as a demon.
So
when I reached that point,
you basically
at that moment,
adopted a Socratic worldview.
No, absolutely not. It was not that sophisticated. I was sitting there reading Aristotle, and I realized the beauty and harmony of the universe.
Okay.
And the first thing I said, I've got to go get laid. And I went to a bar and I picked out the first girl that was good looking. And I said, you must take me home and you must fornicate. And she said, great. I said, I'm a virgin.
Are you being facetious or truthful?
Absolutely not. I just take you to the bar that I went to. It's a country western bar.
Wait. You
talked about this in the first podcast.
Wait. You had this a moment, and you did what? You went to a bar.
You decided that you wanted to get laid.
I understood the beauty, and I realized, holy mackerel, I want that beauty. I was a virgin, Bob. You know how it is when you're in the church. You got to keep that virginity going, right?
Can you just not stop editorializing and give us some facts here? You went to the bar.
Yeah, Your Honor, I went out and I got laid because I was 21.
Can you hear him okay?
It was not. No,
Aristotle.
It wasn't. It was Aristotle. You went to the bar.
Yes.
And then you went and got laid.
Yes.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right. Well.
And then was there something about your first sexual experience, losing your virginity, that had something to do with this?
Yeah, it didn't feel guilty. It felt good. And
Okay.
I thought,
Were you?
okay,
Let me ask you this.
is
I don't know the answer to
science.
this.
Well, hold on.
Were you a virgin because of your devotion to?
Definitely. I've listened to J. Vernon McGee. Do you know J. Vernon McGee?
Do I know J. Vernon McGee? Bless his dearly departed soul. Of course I know who
Definitely.
he was.
So you.
What a man. That was a man.
Well, yes, he had a lot of theological prejudices, but that's not the issue.
He was,
So
he
let
was
me
not a pervert, though. That guy was straight up.
Let me understand this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Born again Christian,
Yeah.
loving Jesus,
Yes.
as I understand, admiring me and what I did.
Yes. I used
Okay,
to listen to
okay,
you, Bob.
okay.
Let him interrogate you.
Sorry, am I
And
telling
then,
No, you're good. You're good.
and
You're doing great.
Some of
then
those I'll snip it.
Aristotle's view of reality, of good and evil, of the cosmos and how it exists and why it exists, turns you around. You go to a bar and then get laid and it felt good.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Exactly.
Okay. Guilty as charged
Of what?
of apostasy. That obviously.
But with demon or not?
Obviously, in my opinion, you turned. You made a moral U-turn. Remember what I said earlier? People don't have as much of an intellectual objection to the gospel as they have a moral objection to the gospel. I rest my case. You had a moral objection, and you decided to go down that path.
What you want to say, James?
Yes. Anything that he identifies as apostasy, he dismisses. He calls intellectual posturing. So if someone like me were to get in there and use just straight up logic rather than some emotional epiphany like Ammon, he would reject that as well. So he calls any intellectual, that is to say, any thinking, apostasy. And that is crazy. Now, I totally reject Ammon's view of Septuagint priority or the priority of Greek culture, but I myself am a huge admirer of Aristotle because of his naturalistic worldview. And in this respect, I've been a harsh critic of Ammon Hillman and his scholarship. For example, they're talking about the Septuagint or the priority of Greek over any other ancient tradition. Here, I think Ammon is wrong, just factually, but Ammon is also resting it too much on emotion. He's having his own emotional epiphany. But if I were to choose the natural world versus, an apologist's divine world and dismiss any rational argumentation at all, then the apologist would dismiss me just as much. I think you can give a rational argument as opposed to Ammon's emotional argument. But if I were to have to choose Aristotle and sex in this world over a rigid view of Orthodox Christianity as this guy sees it, it surprises me right now that in the wider philosophical sense, I'm on Ammon's side here. I choose the natural world in Aristotle over, but I don't do it. It wasn't an emotional epiphany for me. It was an identification of reality through reason. So, and as I say, I know I have all kinds of disagreements on many things, not just the priority of the Septuagint or Greek culture over any other. But when you listen to the argument, it's like they're emotionalists arguing past each other. And this guy the apologist can't accept the fact that, hey, I read Greek, I was impressed by Aristotle's natural worldview, and that's what changed my mind. It was a very emotional process for Hillman. But look, I mean, I'm a harsh critic of Ammon. I do not think highly of him as a scholar or as a person. On the other hand, so far in this discussion, and they're both exchanging ad hominems, and neither of them, they're personally attacking each other, and that can be avoided on both sides. Thank you very much. But if I were to have to weigh it on the scales, Ammon's view is so far, Ammon is killing the apologist. I'm surprised to hear myself even say that, because I have such a low view of Ammon on numerous scores, including his view of Septuagint priority over the Hebrew.
Right. This whole debate is a disaster.
It looks a bit like a bit of a train. Yeah,
it is.
Which was contrary to the path that preceded you,
Correct.
to which you were very devoted.
Oh God, I used to jerk off and get so depressed because Jesus was watching me jerk off. And I knew it was bad, man. I knew it was bad.
Did that affect you? Like, did
Oh,
that
wait
have
a minute.
Did that
Wait a
have
minute.
Oh yeah,
wait a minute,
every
wait a
time
minute.
I was coming home
We
from
don't-
college and I looked up at the billboard, they had
At this point, we
Hooters
don't
thing, and I was
need to
like,
know about your masturbation practices.
Well, he was saying that.
I
I think the reason he was explaining that was because he felt like he was sinning by actually going out and having sex with a woman. So
Correct.
he had to masturbate, and he felt. He said I think what he's
Yeah, yeah,
expressed.
yeah, okay.
He felt guilty of that.
Okay.
Yeah, the guilt of
So
masturbation.
finally, you dispelled that guilt by
Yes.
going out and
By
having sexual
dispelling,
intercourse.
and I dispelled it all night long.
And
So did that make him-
You sinned and you loved it,
Definitely.
and it's been downhill ever since.
No, that was the beginning of my training. It's been glorious.
Okay.
So your life has been better since you left Christ.
Oh God, if you can't find Aphrodite, right? Christianity blocks you from Aphrodite, right?
How-
and
how
that's
so?
a whole part of existence, the Great Mother. It's why you can't worship a Great Mother in Christianity.
Why can't you worship? Is that true? You can't worship a great mother.
Well, this could get rather interesting. I've been to Ephesus. I've seen the statues of Aphrodite, which is this goddess with multiple breasts.
That's Artemis.
That's Artemis.
That's Artemis, but it's also Aphrodite.
No, it's not. Artemis is a virgin. Artemis is a
interchangeable.
virgin.
Screwed up right
basically
there.
interchangeable.
No. You have sex in the
Okay,
temple
let
of
him go. It's okay,
Aphrodite.
it's okay.
That's a big distinction. You can't say Artemis
with
is
his pendulant breasts hanging from her.
Yes, Artemis.
And it was in front of statues like this that the maidens were deflowered to become advocates of the goddess. I mean, there's all sorts of hideous stuff.
Okay.
But it's almost all of it. The Greeks were highly sexualized.
yes. Right.
And
Yeah. I think he
this
made
is
that
what
pretty
they
clear.
did, and this is what the culture was based on, and then this is what he bought into. So this part of the conversation has been helpful to me to understand. But what nationality are you?
Oh God, just a mixture. Just a whole bunch of some Dutch ancestors, some German, some Scottish. I don't know. People just loved, man.
Dutch, German, Scot.
Yeah.
Is that basically it?
No, supposedly there may be some native in there as well, but
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, to me, as an exorcist, consistent with what you're telling me.
No Scandinavian though.
Well, thank God he doesn't have the Vikings you did.
Yeah.
By the
How
way, I
so?
should have had you break that curse.
Wait. The apologist is an outright racist. Is he actually thinking that someone's race and ethnicity? I mean, Ammon is.
That's what he's suggesting right there.
Ammon is suggesting a very typical American sort of white mutt pattern, right? And so he's saying, but that suggests something to me. And of course, Ammon is right. It's Artemis. I mean, her temple at Ephesus is one of the wonders of the ancient world. And
Yeah,
she's-
Bob's ignorance is clear.
yeah, but I don't believe in Aphrodite any more than I believe in Yahweh. But
So I think what we're talking about here, in my estimation, as an exorcist, is that the currents that he had just described was not as epiphanous in a negative sense as we might think of it. It was the end result of a process that was intergenerational and probably going back to these ancestries. And there is something highly sexualized and debaucherous back there that was looking for a way to work itself through. And it found a victim, and he was that victim. And unfortunately, he did what he did. But I would
I'm not
like to
victim,
say,
Bob.
I want to
Don't
make
all
one.
people experience that?
I just want to finish by saying,
Okay.
to me, the mystery of Christ is that even Ammon could return to the fold and become an advocate for the grace and the mercy of God. Paul killed Christians. 2 thieves were crucified with Jesus. 1 repented.
Oh, they were thieves.
I do not. What?
The thieves were crucified on both sides.
Yeah. One repented, 1 didn't. I'm just saying that I marvel at the grace of God that even you could return to faith in Christ. I don't know what it would take. I don't know how it could happen. I'd be happy.
It could happen. You'd have to explain to me.
I would love to
like
play
those
some part in
thieves.
that process.
Like those thieves. It doesn't say they're thieves, Bob. It says they're child.
But
people worthy of death in
right now,
according
the
to
problem,
Roman law.
So I'm going to stop it right there real quick. James, you want to say something? Sean, if you want to say something while I get this thing ready.
Okay, well, no. I mean, Ammon is making a mountain out of a molehill with the word lestis. Okay, the people that Romans don't just crucify; they have many forms of execution. What they crucify are rebels and traitors. And so, in the first century, many Jewish people were crucified when Romans perceived them to be traitors. Very often, messianic traitors like the Zealots and so forth. But it's a specific Roman form of execution for a specific crime, some kind of traitor betrayal. Otherwise, you don't get crucified. For example, if you were AWOL in the Roman army, you'd get crucified as a traitor. And if you were a rebel against the Roman government, you were crucified, claiming to be the king of the Jews. And I think that's much more likely that Jesus and others that were crucified with him and accused of being thieves or robbers or things of that kind, what we're really hearing about is the crucifixion of Jewish rebels in the first century, if I put it into a correct historical context for Ammon. But that's my view. The apologist is still, for God's sake, refusing to use logic, and anyone who might use reason or logic or have a different view of the text, even if Ammon's is not correct, anyone who's using reason and logic according to the apologist, he's a sinner already, and write him off. He's an apostate, and that's that. So there's no way to have a rational discussion with the apologist here. I'm not sure if there's a way to have a rational discussion with Ammon yet. But even Ammon is now starting to reveal his colors. I do not think that all three of those guys being crucified we're meant to believe that they were child molesters. No, they were crucified because they were rebels against the Romans, guilty of treason, in effect.
So I'm going to play a clip. I'm going to play a quick segment from the in-person video I did with Stephen Nelson and Professor Dennis McDonald. Just real fast. Let me find it. Okay, it's about 18 minutes in. Okay, let's get to right here.
What Jesus is saying is that why did you bring the cavalry? Basically, why did you roll up on me with all these, like, with weapons, as if I were a violent perpetrator of if I were a violent criminal? You don't need to do that to me. I've been in the temple. You could have seized me a long time ago. This is an undue use of force in this arrest. Like that's what he's objecting to. He's not saying you're coming at me as if I'm a human trafficking child molester, right? There's no connection here between the young boy and Jesus' activity and his status and his denying the fact that he's a lestes. I think the context of what Mark means by this word is very, very clear, and I don't think that Dr. Hillman has a license to extend that meaning so far.
The word really is used as criminal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the crime is. And Jesus is saying, I'm not a criminal.
Yeah.
And again, I could give you a Homeric background to that, but we don't need to go there at this point.
He jumps.
That is a much more rational discussion of the biblical text. But Romans had other ways of killing people, executing people. Crucifixion is used on the Jewish rebels because they're traitors, they're rebels. And just as I say, Roman soldiers would be crucified if they went AWOL. They're traitors. The Romans had other ways of executing people, believe me, and some horrific ways of executing people depending on the crime. And
Right.
They might even give you a chance to commit suicide if you were a Roman citizen, so rather than face execution. So I think we can know with a little specificity, but the scholars you just played are far more correct. They're on it. They're naming it exactly correct in that sense. Ammon is getting his facts wrong about just plain facts wrong about the historical context, in my view.
Let's see here. We'll go to 46 minutes in now. Well, actually, we'll start here.
Is the kid see? Heracles has to have Hylas. He has to have his boy. Zeus has to have Ganymede. On the Priapeic side, they call it Ganymede's. And the question is, do you drink from Ganymede's?
All right, bring me back down to earth here. What's going on in the park again? So Jesus has the purple on his face.
Yeah, he's got the purple on his face.
So Jesus is having some sort of a psychotic fit, right?
He's having some kind of overwhelming emotional state that's hitting him so hard, he's falling on the ground. So he's got something on board that's causing him to stumble.
And it's 4 a.m. in the morning?
It's 4 a.m. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got and who
he just came from
who wrote this, by the way?
Party with the kids. He just came from
Did one of the cops write this? One of the cops that arrested him?
No, this is Mark. Yeah.
Mark was there.
Well, no, Mark is telling you the secret things that you're not supposed to know.
Yeah, he's basically, I've looked into as many references as I could find of.
And I actually think that might be implying the secret gospel of Mark right there, which he has discussed elsewhere, but we'll keep playing.
This porphyra, which is it can either refer to the dye that was extracted from these mollusks all the way back for, as much as history as we have in the Greek world. Those mollusks were common sea creatures, and it was known in as far back as we can tell that you could hit those things and get purple dye out of them that could be used to dye clothing.
Yeah.
Right. And then because it was so labor intensive, you had to kill one of those to dye like a little patch of a garment. And so you had to kill hundreds of them to produce fabric in the volume that you would need to actually run a fabric trade. And so it was very common in the ancient world, and it was very expensive due to the labor-intensive nature of the production of those purple garments. You might know this off the top of your head, but the color of Jesus's garment changes from gospel to gospel through the synopsis. So in one case, his garments are kokina. In another case, they're porphyrea, and then and I think there are even another color. There are different colors of sort of on the spectrum between red and scarlet and purple. And so the kokino would be like more of a Roman. I think that's Luke, right? Like the kokinon, if I recall. That would be the color that like the Roman aristocracy would be associated with, the military class. The purple would mean that basically they're clothing him in a way that gives him the trappings of regency, of being a royal, right? That's the whole point.
That is exactly correct. And Roman aristocrats, Roman senators, and Roman magistrates wear a specific costume, and the clothing that you wear as a Roman senator or magistrate is you can only wear it if you are. If you're a senator, there's the famous red striped toga. And if you wear the purple, you are a consul. You are the top level of Roman politics because you're wearing what he describes correctly as a very expensive dye in the ancient world. What I find it interesting is that Jesus here is being depicted in the Gospels as some kind of Roman aristocrat, some kind of Roman nobleman or senator, or maybe even consul or emperor. So they're giving what those colors suggest is rank, and rank within in a Roman context. That's what I find fascinating. And again, the scholar here that you had on is getting it much more correct than Ammon. It's not that Jesus is being purple. It's that Jesus has got the top ranked color in Roman politics that only can be worn by someone at the top rank of Roman politics. Make sense?
Yeah.
The problem as I see it is that you've dug such a deep hole by being so vehement in your opposition to historic Christianity as we know it and 2,000 years of church history. It would take a lot to turn that ship around.
would.
Bob, do you,
But
see, do you understand?
God is powerful, and God could do it.
Yeah.
Do you, like so my perspective, and I think a lot of people listening to this hear the history of the word leistes and the translations of the word leistes, which Julius Caesar famously called the guys that kidnapped him, the pirates that kidnapped him and held a ransom for him. He crucified them and he called them publicly leistes, right? These guys were people who kidnapped a child. Julius Caesar when he was a child. So when you see Jesus saying, being caught in this scene in the Bible in the public park with the kid, and he goes, I'm not a leistes, I'm not a leistes. And then 8 hours later, he's crucified, which is what happens to people who are kidnapping children.
That's the gospel according to Ammon.
No. But that's the true history of what happened with Julius Caesar. No, it's not the true.
No, it is not the true history.
That's not what happened to Julius Caesar?
We'll stop it right there. So I know. So we addressed this earlier this year, and in that video I was showing earlier, late last year. Go ahead, James.
The story is famous. Julius Caesar was on his way east as an official of the Roman government, And when he was kidnapped by the pirates, he boldly said, you guys are toast. They're going to pay the ransom for me, and then I'll hunt you down and get you crucified. And that's exactly what he did. So the punishment is appropriate because what they did was kidnap a Roman official on a diplomatic mission to the east. Again, the scholars are far more correct here that you had on second than Ammon on that. So I take issue with Ammon on that, but we're not getting a rational response from the apologist, of course, who's just saying you're deep into this and trying to give this your own explanation. But there is an explanation, understanding the history of the ancient world, that is quite different from either of them, frankly. They're both, this is a train wreck. This is a dumpster fire in process.
I'm just trying to find a clip real quick where this is addressed, but while I find it, I'll just keep it rolling.
Okay.
Why don't you consult independent scholars about those questions?
I've asked independent scholars about the history of Julius Caesar.
Now, you've asked them to be on your show, but
this is off the show. This is private conversations I've had.
No, okay, well, I always suggest that you do that. So, as I understand, were you dismissed from Dallas Theological Seminary?
No, I left. I went and saw the president, and I left. And I told him, I said, your program's not what it's up. It's not up to standard as it was under J. Vernon McGee. And he agreed to me. This is Walfred. He said, I know that.
He said that?
Your Greek program is terrible. It's fallen off.
Okay, but
and at that
I would
point, I already had a
suggest
bachelor's, so it was a waste of time.
I would suggest you take that question to a conservative seminary like Dallas.
He did to Dallas.
And there
wouldn't I want to take that to an unbiased source? Because by definition, somebody who's in a seminary is going to be biased towards
You're taking this from a biased source.
I agree,
so
but I have...
they're all going to be, everybody's biased.
I've asked people who are in the middle of this, though, people who aren't on the religious side, people who who think Ammon is full of shit. I've talked to people who think he's completely full of shit. And I asked them about this history of Julius Caesar and crucifying leistes and the word leistes being used, and they can agree on that. They don't necessarily agree with his theories, but they do agree on that principle.
Okay.
So that's what I'm just asking, do you understand my position, how I'm...
All right, so now I'm going to shift back to the video I was showing a little bit earlier. We're going to go 21 minutes in. I think some of this is addressed in this part. I don't exactly remember, but
it's just I just don't find the context that he's claiming is there.
Right.
But I do know that there are many different I mean the people that
Theseus
takes on, right? Like those are also listes. Like liste are like very common sort of antagonists in Greek prose, and right, like I mean,
it's criminals who are involved with some kind of fiduciary irresponsibility.
So what is in a nutshell, like, what is this this young boy doing in the scene, abruptly appearing? Why is he naked? Like, what is your reading on this? Because Dr. Collins' commentary sort of keeps it everybody keeps it pretty ambiguous. Like, not a lot of people have a good explanation for what this is, and I know you have a literary explanation for this.
Well, if this is the time to talk about it, I'd be happy to.
Please.
But I need to start with the Odyssey. Odysseus learns from Circe after a feast that he has to go to Hades to consult with the blind seer Tiresias in order to get home. When he learns that he has to go to Hades, he says that I wanted to give up on life. In other words, he'd still get to Hades, but he'd get to Hades in that way dead. Jesus, after the Last Supper with his disciples, goes to Gethsemane, and he says he's sorrowful even unto death. And then he prays his prayer. Now, Odysseus, when he's with Circe after the feast, is the only one awake because all of his buddies are sleeping off the drunk and the feast that night. And so at the end of it, he says, wake up, we're off on our way to Hades. Jesus goes to his sleeping disciples and says, wake up. It's time for us to go, and Jesus is going to then be going to his death. But the issues don't end there. Elpenor, who got too drunk, was sleeping off his drunk at Circe's roof. And he falls and he breaks his neck, and his soul flees to Hades, and his body is left behind. He's fleeing, his soul is fleeing from his body. It's at that point when Judas arrives, this young boy, and it's a Neanias or Neaniskos in the two. I mean, it's so obvious that you have this flight, and then Odysseus goes to the netherworld. He finds his friend Elpenor. Elpenor says, please go back and bury my body. Odysseus does so at dawn, and everybody is weeping because this young man lost his life. What happens in Mark is this young man flees, but he reappears in the tomb. And now it's a matter of joy because the disciples are supposed to learn that Jesus has been raised from the dead. But the women do not transmit the message that they were told by the young. So the young man in the tomb is the same man who fled. He flees naked, he comes back, and he's wearing a white robe to symbolize resurrection, and he's giving a witness to the resurrection. Now, this may seem far-fetched, but I would encourage people to take a look at my synopses of epic tragedy in the Gospels for the parallels. They're really quite striking.
Between the boy and then the young man in the tomb.
And the whole context of here you have a meal, you have sleeping associates, you have...
So he showed that the story there is very similar to the Homeric story of Elpenor. So it's not quite what I wanted to play for this part, but I did want to play it anyway at some point during this review.
Fascinating as always, Dennis MacDonald.
Yeah.
His comparisons. See, Dennis MacDonald has read Greek literature as well, Ammon Hillman, but he understands the parallels, I think, a little better. I'm not sure I fully agree with all of what Dennis MacDonald says about the parallels, but they're all so fascinating. I mean, comparisons between Homer and Euripides and the New Testament are inherently fascinating. Some of his parallels are stronger than others, but when you back up and look at all the ones that Dennis MacDonald puts together, it's sort of striking, and and just as a matter of circumstantial evidence, it's striking that there are parallels from classical Greek literature in the New Testament at all. So if any of the parallels that Dennis MacDonald argues for are correct, it's a startling fact that Greek literature is being used in the New Testament as it is. So Dennis MacDonald I find to be much more fascinating, even if I don't agree with all the parallels he's doing, even if just some of them are right. It's a startling fact, and frankly much more interesting than Ammon Hillman's take on it. Whatever you think of Dennis MacDonald's parallels with Greek literature, he too sees, what's interesting is that, like Ammon Hillman, but I think he's found a much more credible, at least possibility for parallels in Greek literature than Ammon Hillman has, if that makes sense.
Yes. I can't seem to find the part where the Julius Caesar aspect of it is addressed in the videos. But Jim, I think you addressed that yourself. So I don't think there's any need for me to go find it any further. So let's continue watching the debate.
Yeah,
Why
I
I'm
understand
skeptical.
your position. You're not a Greek scholar.
You understand why I'm skeptical, though? How can I be a great scholar?
I understand that because you've been tainted by him.
Hey, now you're getting aggressive.
Okay?
I love it, Bob.
And he's
Bring
not,
it.
and,
Talk
and,
free.
and he's not credible.
Oh,
Okay?
So he does have a PhD in classical philology.
Well, but he appears to, and he, he
Like,
wants to be considered that, but in the bigger scheme of things, I understand maybe you haven't been able to facilitate the forum that would allow the proper scholars to be here and debate that.
What
in
makes
an
you think I'm
academic
like-
setting.
I think this will open the door to it. Now
But I
that you've
think
kind of
that-
broken the seal, I think now this will open the door to it.
I think it will
I
too.
do think that somebody who claims to be following Christ, who suddenly throws that overboard for Aristotle and a night of hot sex, is really not credible.
That's what you're basing credibility on?
Really
You
not
realize
credible.
he can't read
So
this
my-
book.
my-
you realize
my-
he can't read this. This is
my-
great, Bob. Would you like to translate for
my-
us? Here. Here's the
let him
Bible.
go, let him go.
It's
my
the Bible,
original,
Bob. The devil told me to do this. It's the Bible, Bob.
He thinks
Can
the
you
devil's
read it for
talking to
me?
him, Bob.
Watch people. Look at your audience.
He's
Bob.
not talking. He's manifesting demons.
You don't want
He's
me.
manifesting
you
demons.
don't want to play this, Bob. Don't let Danny show the world that you cannot read the fucking Bible. You flim-flamming. That's from the devil. He
That's
said,
not from
make
him,
sure
that's
and
from
get
the
the
devil."
flim-flamming. Make sure and get the flim-flamming. And he said something
listen,
about the incubus in your
You're
wife,
digging
too.
your hole deeper, Ammon. You really maybe should stop.
Oh, God. You're
We
afraid.
have to get to
I
the
do
bottom
have a
of this.
question.
They're afraid.
The
you know,
people,
they're afraid.
We're doing this to learn. I think we're learning a lot.
May I ask a simple question?
Sure.
Is Ammon your christened name?
It is my third name. It's my second middle name.
Exactly. Has anybody called you out on that?
Look, here. It's on my driver's license, Bob.
No,
You wanna see it?
but it's not your christened name.
What the hell? What does that mean?
What did your
what is the Christian
parents name you?
My mother gave me 4 names when I was born. David, Charles, Ammon, Hillman. And I go by Ammon because David murdered a bunch of people.
Wait. Why did they give you Ammon?
Let's see the driver's license. We need proof. Can you punch it on this, Steve?
Well, I'm just asking. Why did they give you?
David,
I'm just curious.
Charles Hill. It doesn't say Ammon.
Oh, they didn't put the fucking Ammon on my... It's on my birth certificate.
You know, if you don't stop
It's on my
using
birth
the F
certificate.
word, I will leave.
All right, stop.
I'm
We need-
not going to
look,
put up
we need-
with
Can I
that.
bring
listen,
Chewy
listen.
and just tell him that
We
it's
need-
on my birth
we need to
certificate?
make
It's my
this-
second middle
We need to make this. Hold on, Bo, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to make this something that people can learn from.
YouTube
That's the
friendly.
purpose of this.
I
Not
understand.
YouTube friendly.
No.
No, just respectful so people can
Respectful.
learn from this. We need to make
No
this.
F-bombs.
Where
No F-bombs. What's the
did
point? You're just going
the
to ruin
name
it.
I apologize,
Ammon
dear.
come from?
I'm
Where did the name Ammon come from?
My uncle's name is also Ammon, his first name, so I don't know. Yeah, I really don't. Well, there's a bunch of immigrants from Europe, man, from all different places. I have no idea. No idea. Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Where do you think it comes from?
What makes you curious?
I don't know. Maybe the Ammonites.
Who are the Ammonites?
Ask him.
Who are the Ammonites?
Oh, they're nobody.
They're nobody.
Isidore said.
Huh?
Isidore, Saint Isidore. He wrote
I'm talking about the ancient civilization.
Yeah, I know you're talking about the Ammonites, or as my southern relatives preachers would say, the Ammonites.
They
But
say
I get that.
Ammonites, but
I
you
get
say
that.
and I'm just curious. I don't know. You know, that may be just a red herring, but it's.
I think it
find
is.
I find it rather interesting that you were given that name, if that is what you were given.
Yes, I haven't given it much thought.
And
for
you
the
want to tell
Ammonites.
this man what the Ammonites were like, what they did?
It was one of the groups that they wanted to destroy.
Israel.
In the Septuagint, they're talking about
They were the
Israel
enemy of
going in,
Israel.
and they had to totally
And they
wipe
practiced
let him go.
human sacrifice.
He's letting you talk. Let's let him describe.
I'm not
They
sure
were-
he's going to tell you the whole truth.
Well, if he
They
does
were
it, then you
one-
can correct him.
They were one of the people that was genocided in antiquity. Yeah,
The
claiming
Ammonites were
from
genocidal.
That's what the text says. Yeah.
Okay.
There's not much evidence for it. That's
But
what
just
the
who
text
were
says.
they historically? Who were they historically? Who did they worship?
I think you're probably going to say Moloch or something like
Moloch,
that.
yes. And they practiced infant sacrifice.
Infant with the
and blood
God, the
rituals
altar,
and all
yes.
sorts
Oh,
of
God.
sexual licentiousness.
All sorts.
Okay, so I don't know that there's a connection, but
Yeah.
oftentimes a name, as you well know, from ancient Hebrew culture, always designated something spiritually about the progeny.
Oh, here we go. So on top of inherited demonic possession that he talked about earlier, now he's making a link because so he happens to be called Ammon because he calls himself that, and links it to the biblical Ammonites, and it's just a mess.
I don't even know that that's the connection. But in any case, yeah, they're one of the groups, You remember the story of the Amalekites.
That's literally what Bob's implying there.
Yeah, you remember the story about the Amalekites. King Saul was told to wipe out all the Amalekites, down to the women, the children, the slaves, the animals. And King Saul sins because he spares some of the animals. But babies, slaves are wiped out in a genocide. And so the apologist is actually giving a justification for genocide. The Ammonites, the Amalekites were wiped out by the Israelites in Hebrew text. It doesn't come from the Septuagint, Ammon. It comes from Hebrew texts. But the point is, the tradition, at least, and the history on this, it's such ancient history, we don't have an easy way to confirm this. But the tradition preserved in Hebrew literature is that there were these genocides. And if it's, killing children, slaves, and animals, this guy's giving a collectivist, it's collective guilt, even kill the babies, even kill the slaves. And he's giving a moral justification for racial extermination down to the babies and the slaves and the livestock. And he thinks that kind of thing in the Hebrew Bible is justifiable. So the apologist is advocating racial genocide, just like you.
That's what he's doing.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah. On top of racism.
Yeah. What
all that stuff.
Connect dots now with what he said earlier.
And now to address what Ammon was saying, notice that he's saying that this is in the Septuagint. Now, what he's not explaining is, and I don't think a lot of Ammonites that follow Ammon understand this, but people like Rabbi Tovia Singer will point this out. So the slaughter of the Ammonites is in the book of Judges.
Right.
That's not part of the Pentateuch, the Torah.
Right.
The Septuagint was originally only the first 5 books of the Torah. The Septuagint that we actually have, as we have it, comes from Origen of Alexandria's Hexapla. That doesn't mean that the rest of it wasn't translated into Greek before Origen, but as we have it, is from the Hexapla. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because since Ammon thinks the Septuagint is the original text, how could he say this is in the Septuagint? Because Judges was sure as hell not originally in there.
Right. When Ptolemy II commissioned the original version of the Septuagint, he was commissioning a translation of the Torah. Now, whether all of the Greek translations date from Oregon or not is, I think, an arguable point.
And before you continue, I just want everybody to know that this is a 3rd century CE era when we're talking about Oregon and the Hexapla. Continue.
It certainly was subsequent to the original Greek translation of the Torah, which was commissioned by the Ptolemies in Egypt. That's absolutely correct. I'm not sure of the dating of and I'm not sure anyone is certain, but you're right. We have it by Oregon's time, that's for sure. And Oregon, it's an interesting.
Let me correct myself. I meant to say Hexapla.
And it may be that Oregon is responsible for it all. But the point is that it's I think a matter of controversy whether there were Greek translations of other Hebrew texts. But the point is, there is an older Hebrew text of Judges. There is an older Hebrew text of 1st and 2nd Samuel, and where these sort of Joshua, where these sort of wars of the Israelites and their defeat of their enemies, the people who, and of course, Israelite enemies in the Hebrew texts are baddies. They don't follow Torah. But the original text, even here, is Hebrew.
Yes, agreed. Now let's resume.
Now, is it possible that there's a curse of Ammon on this man, and it was put there, maybe not deliberately, but perhaps deliberately by an ancestor? I don't know if he's telling the truth.
That is the sexiest
If he's telling the
thing.
truth, if this is an ancestral name, I would say I'd change my name, but he hasn't. And he may, I'm just suggesting.
Well, your name, your public name was what'd you call it? Did you ever call yourself David, or was it?
DCA Hillman was what I got.
When
put
did you
on my
change it to
publications. I didn't change anything. My mother.
when did you kill David?
You now want to be known as Ammon.
When did you kill David?
When did I get rid of? Yeah, when I realized that he was
You
a
now
mass, he was a mass
want to be known
murderer.
as Ammon.
Okay.
And is it
No. Carl Ruck was sitting with me one day. Dr. Carl Ruck, he's a classicist, and he's sitting with me one
He's
day.
a Harvard classical philologist.
I turned to him and I said, hey, you know, David was a mass murderer. I hate that name. And he goes, why don't you use your middle name? What is it? And I said, well, I've got two, Charles and Ammon. And he goes, oh, Ammon, that's a good one. Use that one. That's a true
It has a
story.
better ring to it
That's a
than
true
Charles.
story.
There may be nothing to that. I just find it interesting. I find it interesting because everything that you're suggesting is.
I think it's obvious because Bob will shut up about it that he thinks there's something to it.
And ancestral curses and curses in general and racial curses, that's what this apologist is arguing for. It's a very ugly form of fundamentalist Christianity that our apologist here is arguing for. Despicable, really. But, you know, as we pointed out, Ammon himself has dubious positions. The Septuagint is not the original form of the Hebrew Bible. No, it's the Hebrew Bible. Sheesh. Whether it's the Torah or the Tanakh, at least in nearly every case. So, yeah, it's not. The original is not the Septuagint, Ammon. So, and they're both personally attacking one another. This isn't a very rational or, you know, civil debate going on at all, but the apologist, frankly, is not making that at all possible. You're an apostate. I can't argue with you. You've made a turn. Until you talk to a conservative theologian at a conservative seminary, I won't even talk to you unless it comes through that lens, according to this apologist. And that makes him utterly closed to any rational argumentation or a look at any of the actual evidence as we have it. So, wow.
Consistent with that type of a belief system.
What if I told you that St. Isidore said that the name of the Antichrist is Ammon?
Could be.
Yeah, he said that.
Who is Saint Isidore?
I wrote that down.
It could be many names.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like
names.
you, I find it just interesting.
If you sacrificed your children to Moloch in a
oh my God!
in a
can you
bloody
imagine?
ritual, I would say that could lead to the Antichrist. It could lead to a lot of things, but really, at a bottom line here, you're not interested in renouncing the devil and renouncing the path that you're on to receive an exorcism at this point. You're not.
I wouldn't dare step forward and renounce the devil. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Just like I wouldn't dare step forward and renounce Vishnu. Right? I'm not a renouncer. I'm not a renouncer, and I can't do that.
Okay, so you're not willing to renounce that.
No,
and as you know,
my brain says I have to have this.
Every
Bob.
historic Christian baptism included the renunciation of the devil.
Of course.
Okay, all right. And you're not willing to stand with historic Christianity?
No. Because what we have now is not what they had in
You've
antiquity.
rewritten Christianity, you've rewritten the Bible, you've rewritten all these things, the gospel according to Ammon. So there's really no discussion here except the possibility of a private discussion in which you might tell me some things you won't tell in front of a camera.
You know, in antiquity, Bob, the pagans and the Christians...
You're not responding to
would
what I
get
said.
together. I am responding with this answer. In antiquity, the pagans and the Christians, prominent intellectuals, would come together, and they still had that classical civilization's focus on the gymnasium. And they would come just like you and me, and they would debate back and forth, right? I am not looking for any sort of ceremony with crosses. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, Bob. What matters to me is the facts that are in this book that I have dedicated my life to studying.
We get that.
Right?
May I ask just
Why don't you
an
like the
obvious
Bible?
question?
Usually people
What
love the
is
Bible.
tattooed on your head?
Oh my goodness, Bob! That's the point the devil was
I can't
making.
see it. I can't see it. What is it?
Read it, Bob.
Well, I can't read it.
Read it.
It says Medea.
Right, that's Greek, Bob.
And why is it there?
What is the one on the other side?
There. Because,
That linear B?
yeah, this is linear B. Medea, same name. And this, Bob,
And
is
why?
Etruscan.
And wait a
Oh,
minute.
God,
wait a
watch
minute.
this,
Why is Medea there?
It's the same. I'm telling you that. It's the same name in Etruscan. Mattia. She was so well known in antiquity, the first Christ, that she was known all the way from the Black Sea to Spain. Imagine being that popular in antiquity.
Why was she
That's
so popular?
Difficult because of what she could do with the
could she
Christing drugs.
No. Don't you leap from Medea to Christ?
She was the first Christ,
Wait a minute.
historically.
You're not
Let him-
telling me what
let him
she
ask.
did. What did she do?
What did she do? Like, what was her job?
Huh?
She was the queen of Babylon.
Yeah. Queen of Babylon.
Yes.
The fountain of all witchcraft, Babylon.
The Medes.
Babylon the great is
Followed her.
fallen. I'm
Yes,
sure you
I'm
know
telling
those
you,
words.
yes. Yes, you're right.
Babylon, the symbol of ultimate evil.
The witchcraft, the sorcery, the porneia.
And that's
Very
what,
central.
and that's basically what you have on your head.
Not basically, that is what I have on my head.
And you think we can have a reasonable dialogue? You really think that?
Why does that mean we can't have a
You
reason?
are
I
ta-
think this is fascinating.
you tattooed with the symbol of witchcraft and sorcery, and you want
On my
a
head.
dialogue.
on my head?
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
Why do you put tattoo names on your head in antiquity?
what do you? Come on now, Ammon. Let's just. Can you drop the public persona for a moment and just be very
No, this
real
is
here?
me, Bob.
You went from believing that Jesus Christ was your Lord and Savior.
Yes, definitely.
That you were a sinful being
Definitely.
in need of
Masturbating
forgiveness.
sinner.
Overnight,
Yeah.
because of Aristotle
Not overnight, instantly with Aristotle.
enjoying
Yes,
fornication.
definitely.
And then
She enjoyed it too.
tattooing on your head
Yes,
the whore of Babylon.
yes.
The whore of Babylon.
Wow.
The porneia.
That's an interesting leap. If I did not believe in the grace of God and the power of Christ, I would think you are hopeless, but you're not. You're not hopeless. There have been worse than you
Yeah.
who have turned again to Christ.
But
What is your understanding of Lady Babylon?
Huh?
Yeah.
What is your understanding of Lady Babylon? Your personal understanding. of
Well,
her?
Babylon has both literally and metaphorically stood as the ultimate example of sorcery, witchcraft, and rebellion against God. Over and
Because of-
over again,
yeah.
it's
Because of
referred
Medea, because of this woman.
to ultimate rebellion against God.
Okay.
And in the end of time,
So what I'm going to do right now is just I'll real quick state, in order for this Medea theory to work, because this has to do with Medea being called, I think if I remember correctly, what he was saying in other shows had to do with the Greek word cryo, which can be used to refer to a drug, depending on the text. And he is noticing that there's that Greek word or a Greek word that's connected to it was used to refer to the Medea. And because he believes the Septuagint came before the Hebrew Bible, because he would have to make that leap to actually make that work and assume that Christos doesn't come from Mashiach, because Christos is, one can argue that the way the word is constructed is based on the spelling of Creo, but that word was created and defined to mean something different and used to translate Mashiach, which does not refer to a drug in Hebrew. It just means Messiah.
Right.
So
And-
that's the problem here.
Right. And remember, Jewish kings were anointed, just as Jewish priests were anointed. And what it really means is anointed one. And Jesus, is in interesting literary ways anointed and is considered Messiah. And when you change that into Greek, that's probably where Christ comes from. Medea is a witch in Greek mythology. There's no question. She, everyone knows. Just look up any standard text of Greek mythology, and you'll hear all about Medea, and you'll hear all about her powers of witchcraft. The very fact that Ammon has this pagan goddess tattooed on his head. See, excuse me, Ammon, I renounce things. When I don't believe in it, I renounce it. I don't believe in. Let me put it this way: I love Santa Claus. My wife is going to kill me for saying this, but I renounce the existence of Santa Claus, although it's a very benevolent story. I renounce God. I renounce Satan. And it's true that in the Christian baptism ceremony, the Catholic ceremony, they actually have the godparent say, I renounce Satan for the baby being baptized when the baby's just being baptized. Renuncio, the godfather of the child actually renounces Satan on behalf of the baby getting baptized in the traditional Catholic ceremony. But I'm not going to exchange one mystical deity for another mystical deity. I renounce all deities, all supernatural beings, Aphrodite, Medea, you name it, Satan. I renounce them all, if in the sense that I don't believe they're real. And so it feels like we've got a pagan mystic on one side and a Christian mystic on the other, and neither of them are going to really be able to talk about, it would have been interesting to have Ammon debating. You're giving some really good arguments, and you've had some scholars on talking about it. It would have been interesting if Ammon would be willing to, or if these scholars, which I'm not sure they would, I'm not sure I would, be willing to have a debate with Ammon about the meaning of these things, Septuagint priority, what does he mean when he's adopting these pagan goddesses, Aphrodite and Medea, as his own and having them tattooed on his head because he's promoting pagan deities over the traditional Orthodox Christian view of Christ and God. But I renounce mysticism and the supernatural altogether. Renuncio all of it. I'll tell you, I'm a renouncer in the sense that if I don't believe it rationally, if it's not a natural part of this world. And it also seems that Ammon's Aristotelianism is it's like the original traditional reading of Aristotle, highly what they call teleological. So it is a kind of religion. Ammon is preferring Greek religion over standard Orthodox Christian religion. But that's hardly to be chosen. It's not a very good choice.
Jim, can you look at the private chat box and see what I wrote there while I resume the video?
I'm afraid I don't have glasses and I can't read a thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. See if I can.
And just type your answer to it while I play this.
Oh, sure. The answer.
Babylon the Great has fallen.
I'm sorry?
The answer is yes. Don't need to
Okay.
type. I think I was in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if he's coming on, but we'll see.
Yes.
It speaks of this kingdom finally being judged by Christ and cast down.
Okay.
At the end of the age.
The morning star, by the morning star.
And so he has this on his head.
And who was Lady Babylon? What did she do?
Well,
specifically?
this is just a symbol, okay? The symbol is of rebellion, of witchcraft,
Okay, I see.
of the worship of the devil, of human sacrifice. You name it, all the licentious possibilities that are there.
What about medicine?
Okay, that is tattooed on his head.
Did you know the word medicine comes from Medea,
the guy
from First Christ?
Who tattoos this on his head stands in judgment of Christ as a file. I'm done. I'm done. I don't have enough Celsius to keep going.
That has nothing to do with the Bible, though. I don't understand.
But my offer still stands.
Yeah.
My offer still
Because
stands.
you're a flim-flammer. I'm not going to
You'll
take your
come
offer.
see me personally.
You came here to get $5,000. That's what you fucking came here for.
No microphones.
Yeah.
Just you and
No
I talking
microphones.
man to
Oh,
man.
Scary. You're a scared little man. And that's the problem. Just like the
He's
folks
not.
in
He's
Harvard.
sat here and he's been talking to you for 30 minutes.
No, he
He's
hasn't
been
been talking
talking.
about the Bible. He doesn't want to talk about the Bible because he can't.
Okay.
Just like the people at Harvard
I
can't.
am
What is
not-
a Christ, Bob?
You know.
How was
I'm
Medea the
not-
first Christ?
I'm
Can you
not-
explain how Medea was a Christ?
Diodorus Siculus, the historian, comes along. And
I
he
told
says,
you
this is
if
what
there were
Medea
any
did. She
more ad
Christed.
hominem arguments, we would be done.
You just talked about my tattoos. You're
Okay.
such a hypocrite, just like the Christians
no,
everywhere.
But you didn't
A
deny
lover
what I
of
said
lies.
about. You did not
You love
deny what I
lies.
said about the tattoos. You didn't deny it. So look.
What if I picked out your ears and I said, "You
Why
bigoted
don't you,
bastard"? You take it personally, Bob.
Why don't you let me say a prayer?
But you can say a prayer all you want.
I would like
I'm not
to.
restricting you.
I would like to say a prayer.
Please.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Please.
Let's say a prayer.
And I would like to put some holy oil on you when I pray.
You can take that holy oil and shove it in your ass, Bob. I'm not one of your victims.
Wait a minute. What'd you just say?
I'm not one of your victims.
No, that's
you want
not-
to hit
no,
me with
just
your
before
cross,
that.
you
What did you- what did-
psychologically abusive.
Why is the holy
Wait a
water
minute,
psychologically
wait a minute.
abusive?
Wait, what did you just I say I could
said-
do with
I
this?
said
He
you
said
can
put the
shove it up.
water
I
where the
said
sun
you
doesn't
can-
shine.
Do you
can shove
know
it.
what this is a symbol of?
I think it's a symbol of your
Of the Holy
desire
Spirit.
to invade my space, weirdo.
It's a symbol of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And you said I could
What's
shove
the
it
word?
where?
What's the word for Holy Spirit? What's the word for Holy Spirit, Bob? You don't even know that. You're a flim-flammer. You have any snake oil?
What is the word for Holy Spirit? I don't know.
Seriously, Bob, look. These are all his terms, dude. He doesn't even know gospel.
where's my briefcase?
What does the
What
word
did I do with
gospel mean, Bob?
All right.
What did I do with
Are we wrapping it up, Bob? Or are you got a book or something?
Coward. The devil told me you were a coward, Bob.
All right, we're wrapping it
I
up.
will not listen.
I appreciate
kind of abusive,
Oh,
filthy,
look at him.
negative
You've been abusing
language.
people
all right,
for
that's enough.
years.
That's,
And
we don't need to call
name-calling.
names.
Yeah.
Bob showed up here.
I do not have to
he
put up with
engaged
that.
with
I
you.
will not
You
put
still
up
gonna
with
pay
that.
him?
He engaged with you.
You still gonna
if,
pay him?
If he agrees to let me publish this, then yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
that's
not going to pay him. I'm going
Bob,
to donate to the church.
Remember, Bob, that's what you're all about. Remember that.
About
when he
what?
makes his charitable donation, that's you, buddy. That's you.
Let me see that envelope. Is there cash in here?
Cash.
No, I was going to rip it up.
That's your
Well, I won't do that.
prostitution money. You just have him give it to your church, you flim-flammer.
All right. Let's not be rude.
Dude, he said I was demon possessed. He can't take it back? Well, you can say, oh, I'm aggressive with the devil. But when the devil gets aggressive with you, you're a coward and you back down. You go live the rest of your life knowing the devil got the best over you.
I think this audience sees clearly what has happened here, and your
The audience will
reframing
judge.
of it
They
is
will.
not,
They
will
do.
judge.
it's not
They
going
do.
to work.
You're exactly
I
right.
will let the audience
You're
be
exactly
the
right.
judge.
You're exactly. That's the best thing to say. You
That's
should
the
have
best
finished
thing.
with
Let
that.
the
You
audience
should
be
put
the
that
judge.
on the.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate your
Don't
time.
touch my daughter on the way out either.
What?
Don't touch my daughter on the way out.
Are you recording that part?
Yeah, it's recording.
Oh, Bob, I'm a dad. I'm just giving you advice. You do the same thing with your daughters. Bob, how many times did you talk about molesting children on the show? And then you have the balls to look at me and say, you got tattoos. You must be possessed. You've got a lot of gumption. I thought for sure you'd come here because I knew you when I was young. And I said, this guy's got balls. He will confront. And then you were sitting out there talking about confronting the devil, and now you're all afraid.
He's the only one out of dozens of people who came here. He's the only one.
Are you going to let him play the whole thing, or are you going to tell him you can't play parts?
I had my say.
Yeah.
I stated my position.
Yeah. You
Thank
have
you,
the
Bob.
right? Okay.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, Bob.
What a dumpster fire. I mean, my God, two emotionalist guys insulting each other. One of them saying he represents, the Orthodox Jesus, and the other one saying he's speaking for the devil, even though he's not demon possessed, and pagan deities. And frankly, he's got tattooed on his head. It just seems like we have a pagan mystic and a traditional Christian mystic who were there just in an insult fest. And nothing productive was going to come of this. Nothing productive did come of this. They were just insulting each other and talking past each other. And I don't think that either one of them could have had a rational discussion from the looks of it. But I hate, I don't mean to offend anyone who has sincere religious beliefs out there, but I reject both traditional Christianity and pagan religion. And emotionalist approaches are not going to answer our questions. We need to use some rigorous reason, evidence-based logic. And I think that Ammon Hillman makes, as you've pointed out, and your scholars that you played during the course of this have pointed out, Ammon Hillman himself poorly understands the history himself. And he's got his emotional commitment to, Greek cultural and religious priority over any other culture, it seems to me. And so he's arguing for Greek pagan religion, which he thinks was everywhere. And the other one is arguing for traditional Christian mysticism. And I do reject both. The pseudo-scholarship of Ammon Hillman and the dogmatic Christian attitude of the apologist who refuses to discuss, well, both of them really, in one sense, reject reason and refuses to discuss, any evidence, the text itself, or imbue, the thing is, they both probably imbue Christian texts with some kind of special meaning. I do not.
Hey, Leron.
Hi guys.
So there.
It's been a while. It's kind of late where I am. That's the sky. I woke up, saw this, and there's just something I want to say. I can swear on my life. I work as a bouncer. Yeah, I've seen somebody with the exact same mannerisms, the exact same speech, express it in his face. I think 2 nights ago, and I had to remove that guy from a bar I work because he was high off his ass. Take that what you will about the state of Ammon. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. But in my opinion, that type of state requires you to be very, very on something.
Well, he's taking the medicine of Medea. I'm not sure what that means, but he appears to have just as religious an approach as the Christian apologist did. It was certainly emotionalist. He certainly has at least a stated commitment to pagan goddesses, and it's not going to be anything like a scientific debate over history or philology. They both appear to be wedded to their interpretation of texts, and that is a kind of mysticism. Hillman had his own emotional experience. It's funny because he had an emotional experience after reading Aristotle and having sex, but it's still an emotional epiphany that he had, that got him to be committed to pagan goddesses, apart from his, traditional upbringing in Orthodox Christianity. Boy, what a dumpster fire that conversation was. It really wasn't even a conversation.
No, it's kind of like an act where two people use words to not communicate non-verbally, but the words don't have any meaning. It's like talking to I don't know if you ever had to talk to drunk people, but that's essentially what it is. Like, you realize after a while, okay, the words don't have any meaning. It's kind of like watching a movie in a language you don't understand. Like, I swear to you, a Portuguese and a Japanese man could have a more productive conversation than those. No, really, because listen, the words are coming through, and you can associate meaning to them, but there's no cognitive process. Like, the gears just aren't holding. Like, have you ever gone in your car and you thought you thought you already went into, like, gear, first gear, but you were stuck in neutral? And it was just like, why isn't this car going? Things are broken. And it's like, oh, the gears just aren't connected. Well, these people are either I've seen these type of situations that either through substances or through just a method of thinking that is like substances. The gears aren't turning. There's no connection to nothing.
Right. You can't connect to nothing because it's really nothing. But the point is,
sad.
Ad hominem either of them, and insult either of them. But I am analyzing, and I think it just using observation and logic. These guys themselves were not using observation and logic or being rational. From what I heard them say, so I won't assume that anyone was on drugs. But if you reject reason and you embrace mysticism and emotionalism, you are in effect intoxicating yourself in a certain way, whatever chemicals you put into your body. But it wouldn't surprise me. I'll just leave it there.
Well, I'm saying if it wouldn't be the case, I might be surprised. That's all I can really say. And honestly, if I just saw this guy trying to walk into a bar I won't care, I'd be like, not tonight, buddy. Well, that's all I can say. Yeah.
Complete satire.
No, here's the thing. At
The
one
Demon
point,
versus The Exorcist, Part 1. I mean, I was just enjoying it. Like, what am I watching?
I mean, this is better than Jerry Springer. Have you ever watched Jerry Springer?
Yes.
Be honest.
Man.
Yes.
Are you the same bit as I am?
Yeah. Well, it was Jerry Springer without the throwing of the chairs, but it was just as emotionalist and just as non-rational as the typical Jerry Springer episode. Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. If
without
you would
bring in some moral at the end of the story.
I'll be honest with you. I think it would be better if they would throw cells at each other, because then there's at least because then there's at least there's some resolution. Somebody did something, but now they got to go home and hold this grudge for like forever. And I'm like, oh no.
Right. I don't think either of them would trust either of them with their daughters. You know what I mean? And all they could do is insult each other. It was just an emotionalist train wreck, a mystic train wreck of two people who are not rigorous or serious thinkers in any
The
sense.
amazing thing is that they were sober while assumably sober while doing this.
Yeah, I presume they were sober.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
That's the scary part.
Like, imagine somebody who you see, he must be drunk off his butt, but then you're like, no, he doesn't sip a drop. He's a teetotaler. I'm like, oh my god. But no, I mean, this is kind of a warning sign to everybody watching this who's too fed up with something and lets his feelings get ahead of them. This is how you look like. So don't do this. Stop a moment, thank yourself a moment, and breathe in and say, okay, hold on. What do I really think about? Not what do I feel about this. What do I really think about this? Because if you don't...
Right. You're hopeless. You're dangerous. You're an idiot. You're a jerk. I mean, that gets us nowhere. And that's basically what the exchange consisted of. So, we have one guy on one side saying, hail Jesus, and the other guy on the other saying, hail Satan, in effect. And nothing productive rationally can come of that.
I can only tell you this: if there's hail outside, get inside. It's painful. No, but that kind of reminds me of something. Like, how do you even communicate with a person who is in such a condition? Because I remember one time I saw this girl and she said, "Oh, I need help. I think I'm very drunk." And I said, "Honey, if you know you're drunk, you're not very drunk." You get what I mean?
Right, but I hope you didn't her to consume more alcohol.
No, she did, and I told her, no, you're not that drunk. You'll be okay. And it's because if you really are, because the funny thing is, drunk people at a certain stage, they don't know how drunk they are.
Right.
And the thing is, I think when you get into such a rabbit hole of ideology and emotions, you don't know how much you're letting emotions manipulate your thinking.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
you know, what do you tell yourself like that? I think at that point, the only thing somebody can say is some type of outside intervention to the person and tell them, no, stop it. Because you know, alcohol will wear off. This type of thinking doesn't, because it reinforces itself. So, you know, somebody in this state, I don't think you can actually engage with them.
They would have to want to change, and they would need a psychotherapist.
I don't know if they'll need a psychotherapist, but they need something to sober, you know, some type of ideology to sober them up.
Yeah, and that's true. You'd have to be overtly committed to using the method of logic applied to observable evidence.
If you'd know it, but at one point you'll be like, no, you're too far gone to teach it. Like, you know, at some point it sounds sad, but it's like you're too down the hole, and we don't have a method of digging you back up because you dug yourself into it. It's like,
I want to say something real quick that I don't agree that if somebody says that they're drunk, that somehow means they're not drunk. They could be aware, because people also forget things after their drunk period is over, and they'll lose memory of it. But at that particular moment, they could be conscious of it, and they're trying to either get help or trying to warn others about their current state.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could. I mean, if you mean physically drunk, at one point you're so drunk you don't even know you're drunk. That just happens. Like that's kind of the danger zone. If you see somebody like that, you got to cut him off and you got to send them home in a taxi. Right. That's just how it is. That's the job, man. I don't make the rules. I just enforce them.
You're just a bouncer in Ireland.
Thanks. It's only paid to law school. That being said, if somebody is in that ideology, yeah, I mean, they can have moments of clarity, and if somebody comes along and helps them, then they can get out of it. But
I definitely don't think the debate was productive, because you had Bob focusing on Ammon's ancestors, Ammon's name throughout the whole show, basically, saying that he's demonically possessed and all kinds of other crap. And then you kept having Ammon asking Bob, do you know what a Christ is, over and over again? Do you read the Bible? Because he says you don't read the Bible because you don't read the Greek translation. Sorry, excuse me. I meant to say because he reads the Greek the translation of the Greek. Because he says the Greek is the original text, so the Septuagint is the original Bible, but Bob can't read it, so Bob hasn't read the Bible. That's Ammon's logic.
Right. And that's not good logic. And Ammon makes many errors.
He kept pushing this idea that Jesus was a pedophile, and he kept telling Bob that he thinks this, and even though Ammon tried to dance around it and say, "Oh well, I'm not saying he was. A text is saying that."
Right.
But he's imposing his view onto the text. He's imposing his view onto the text.
Yes.
But while denying that's what he's doing.
Yes.
And
worshiping pagan goddesses.
And Bob doesn't seem to go ahead.
Well, I mean, he was in effect embracing the pagan deities almost to the same extent that Bob was embracing traditional Jesus as his deity. So it's really two people committed to their religious perspective on what they regard as sacred texts, in effect, arguing past each other in an mutually insulting emotionalist way. But yeah, Hillman imposes his view on the text, but then again, so do these ecumenical councils that Bob was citing. They impose their view of the text onto it. So it could not possibly be a productive argument.
I have a question. While seeing this, did you ever think that they would come to blows, like physically punch each other?
It didn't look like
I don't think they would.
Insulting, but it didn't look like they, I mean, the worst it got was when Ammon said, you can shove your up your,
Yeah.
and that's an
The
angry.
holy water up his ass. That's
Yes.
yeah.
But both of them were angry. Both of them were insulting. Both of them were not rational about their perspectives. And the result was, as I say, a total dumpster fire.
Yeah, this was just the flame war
Yeah.
face to face.
Both of them were extremely disrespectful to one another.
Yeah.
Ad hominems. They were hurling it at.
Yes.
They were hurling ad hominems at each other throughout the whole show. And Bob would not answer Ammon's questions often. Ammon would not answer Bob's questions often either. Or he would with a different answer as if another question was asked. And I think once they started getting into some of the grotesque details, it got worse. But Ammon wasn't able to flush out all the nonsense that he usually does either. That didn't all quite come out in the debate.
It was doomed from the outset.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Do you think the podcast guy expected this to happen, or was this just like he actually came in this with hopes that this would be useful, or did he just think, no, this is it, so I'm exploiting it?
Part of me suspected he was providing entertainment to his viewers. It's clear that he wanted, he tried. I'll give him that. He tried to kind of make it a little more civil, but part of me in the back of my mind suspects he was just here for a cage match between two guys who were just never going to actually interact and have a real engagement on the text, even the text, much less any wider truth.
The weirdest part is when Ammon said, "Oh, you're just doing it for the money for $5,000." Like, yeah, so man, $5,000. That's the reason. I'm like,
well, a lot of people, will charge for their podcast appearances, especially if it's with someone, that might be difficult, and some people just haven't charged. I don't hold that against someone.
not me neither.
If a person's time is valuable. If he wants to charge his, money for his time, that's professionalism. A person can be an absolute professional intellectual and say, look, my time is valuable. If you want me to talk about my professional expertise, it's going to cost you money. That doesn't make him biased. That doesn't make the truth of what he says, suspect or not true. It just means that, look, this is my profession. And being my profession, I charge for teaching people this thing that I'm an expert in. There's nothing wrong in the world with that at all.
Hey, James, do you want to hear a joke?
Sure, let's lighten this up. Yeah.
All right, the guy goes to a lawyer and he asks the lawyer, excuse me, Mr. Attorney, how much is it for a single question? He says, $100, and you owe me $100.
That's 100. Well, you see, you have to get ready to talk like that because I understand that you're in law school.
Well, that's beside the point, but we can talk later about it. But
let's go ahead and close the show because I think we're starting to get off topic.
Yes,
I'm just starting my stupid jokes at this point.
So I want to say that I appreciate everybody for watching, and that being said, if anybody watching this isn't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, share the video, appreciate it. That being said,
for the love of what you hold the good, don't be like those two guys. Just don't do it. Just check yourself out. Just stop.
Thank you, Leron. Yeah, Sean, Leron, James. Yeah, thank you all for joining me. Hello, viewers. Thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron, and/or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during your live stream. Thank you.